So I'm absolutely thrilled and honoured to introduce our keynote speaker and our host for our proceedings today. Many of you will know him from This Morning TV, where he regularly joins Lorraine and informs the nation on current health topics. You also may know him from the GP Behind Closed Doors, where we brought the Ridge medical practice to our screens on Channel 5. He is a high-profile campaigner of the benefits of nature and wildlife in health and wellness, and he has a huge social media following and inspires us daily with healthy dishes, but more recently, a best-selling author. So, Dr Amir Khan is a proud Bradford GP with a particular expertise in children and women's health, so therefore, who's better to hand over to as we explore the 1001 days of nutrition.
Hi everyone, I'm Amir. I'm a GP here in Bradford. I love Bradford. I'm not leaving, no matter how many times they try and tempt me away from it. I love it here. I'm not going anywhere. And I wish my mum was here to hear that introduction, because she would have loved it. She would have loved it. That was a great introduction. Thank you so much. It's great to be amongst you guys. It's inspiring. I've been hearing about all the work you guys do for the early years and just everything sounds incredible. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from the speakers today. I'm going to soak it all in and regurgitate it next time I'm on Lorraine and sound really clever. Now, we are going to have a little bit of audience participation. I know that usually brings about a groan, doesn't it? But before we do that, I'm going to tell you a little story. So, as was said earlier, I started off my TV career on a show called GPs Behind Closed Doors. And for those of you who haven't seen it, it's like a reality TV show, but in general practice. And the way it came to us was there's this big production company in London, and they'd filmed 5 previous series of GPs Behind Closed Doors in London. And they decided they wanted to come up north. And so, as people from London do, they thought the north is just a big conglomerate of anything kind of north of Watford. And so they'd been to Manchester, they'd been to Liverpool, and they'd been to Newcastle. And we were the last surgery that they were coming to visit to see whether it would be appropriate for them to film with us. And we thought, well, we can't compete with those big cities. Where Bradford, it's not quite in the same league as those places. But we made an amazing lemon drizzle cake for them when they arrived. And that seemed to win them over. And they chose us for the series. And that series was filmed over the course of a year. So what happens in it is they have little fixed cameras that they stick to shelves and walls in each consulting room, and they get the consent from patients to be filmed out in the waiting room. So they have a team of very young, kind of trendy Londoners come up, and some of them stay in the waiting room and get consent, which was great for me because I was so tired of being the only young, trendy person in the practice. So it was great to have a break from that, really. So they came in and they'd consent the patients outside in the waiting room. We wouldn't know who was going to be filmed and who wasn't. And they would just come in and we'd consult as normal. So it was just a normal surgery and some patients had consulted. Over time, because they were there for a year, we got to know the team really well. So I decided it'd be great to kind of just play a little prank on them. So I got one of my school friends to pose as a patient. And this didn't make it onto TV, thank goodness. And I said to him, just come into the waiting room, say you're here to see Dr. Amir, and when they ask you for consent, go along with it. So in he came, and we'd both done GCSE drama, so we had a little bit of acting skills between us. And he sat down, and the researcher came over to him and said, who are you here to see? And he went, I'm here to see Dr. Amir. And she went, great, he's being filmed today. Would you mind being filmed? So this is when the GCSE drama kicked in. He was like, I'm not sure. It's a bit embarrassing. And she was like, go on, you could educate the nation, and show them, what GPs do. And he was like, okay, fair enough. So he got mic'd up and in he trundled. So obviously I pretended I didn't know him. So I was like, right, hi, I'm Dr. Amir. How can I help? And he was like, it's a little bit embarrassing. And I was like, don't be embarrassed. It's not going to go anywhere. It's just you and me here, while the camera's kind of swiveled into focus. And he went, well, I've just come back from Malaga. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, I know what happens in Malaga. You all know what happens in Malaga. So, and I went, okay, very non-judgmental, and said, okay, so tell me what the problem is. And he went, well, I've got a discharge now. And I was like, okay, fair enough. Completely non-judgmental. I said, right, why don't we test what it is? Give me a urine sample and I'll see if I can test it. So the cameras were very interested, I could tell, because when they move around a little bit, there's a gallery upstairs that are watching everything. And off he went to the toilet, and he came back with a urine sample, which was orange squash, but it was in a urine bottle. So I got the lid off and I smelt it, and then I drunk it. And then I said, yeah, definitely chlamydia. And the cameras, they were just like swiveling around. And I gave him a pretend prescription, and off he went. And I waited. I was really pleased with myself, and I waited for them to come down and, we'll have a laugh. And then nobody came. Nobody came down. And I was like, oh, God. And this was on a Friday. And I was like, no, they'll come down. They'll know it's a joke, right? And I waited. Nobody came on a Friday. And then I started to panic because I thought, gosh, what if they are editing this for television? So I thought, no, they'll come. Nobody came on Monday. And then I thought, right, I better go and have a word with them. And then on Tuesday morning, Becky, one of the producers, came down. She looked really sheepish. And she just said, oh, Amir, I don't want to tell you how to do your job or anything. But I just wondered, is there a new way to test for chlamydia? So at that point, I had to come clean and say, it was a joke. But it was fun. It was fun. And speaking of fun, we're going to have a little bit of fun today. So if you've been on the website for Baby Week Bradford, you may well have heard of the Baby Week Wiggle. If you haven't, you will very shortly, because we're all going to do it. We are. But it's all about movement, isn't it? Movement is really good for us. Whether, it doesn't matter how old you are, how able you are, whether you're doing it standing up or sitting down, a little bit of movement gets the juices flowing, and it's really good for our physical and mental health. And I think when we're in a group like this, doing something together releases that love hormone, doesn't it? That bonds us all together, oxytocin. You all know about it because you all are involved in early years and pregnancy. There's lots of oxytocin floating around in those years, isn't there? So we want to create more of that between each other, so we're well bonded as a group for the rest of the day. So we're going to start the wiggle just very slowly as you're sitting down there. So let's just start with wiggling our eyebrows. I can't do the one eyebrow thing, but if you can, let's just start by wiggling our eyebrows. And then we can extend that out to our fingers. Let's just wiggle our fingers around a little bit. Great, you guys are great. Oh, there's no resistance at all here. I love it. Right, come on. And then just in your shoes, do your toes as well a little bit and kick your legs out. Perfect. Now, you're all warmed up, aren't you? You're all warmed up. Great. Now we're going to get to the serious bit, the serious wiggle. I've got a video for this because it's very complicated. Here we go. The Baby Week Wiggle.
Calling humans of all ages, parents, carers, toddlers and teeny tiny babies. Gather your crew, we've got a mission for you. It's the Baby Week Wiggle! Do the wiggle dance. Wiggle, 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 lift up your hands. Wiggle, 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 stretch out wide. Can you hide? 1, 2, 3, surprise! Anyone, everyone, you can wiggle, twist and shout, laugh and giggle, ride the wave, wait for the signal. 1, 2, 3, it's the Baby Week Wiggle!
Yes! I've got to say, watching you all do that was a beautiful thing. It really was. And you guys have got rhythm. You guys have got rhythm. It was all in tune with that. Very, very impressed. Thank you very much for joining in. Okay, so we're all here for Baby Week Bradford, aren't we? And I guess most of you will know what that is. But just to remind you, these are the kind of the key features through the morning that we're going to be talking about. So we want babies and pregnant ladies, to get the best possible start in life. And that starts in pregnancy and goes all the way through to those all-important early years. And we've got some excellent speakers talking today about how to best do that for the people of Bradford. Now, I grew up here in Bradford. I grew up in BD3, Worley Drive, and I was there for certainly for my early years before we moved over to Shipley. And I've got to say, like I said at the start, I really, really love this city, and I do my best wherever I can to promote it, because it doesn't always get the best press, and it's important that we challenge that, because those of us who know Bradford and know the people of Bradford and know the city know how important that is for us, but also know how wonderful the people who live here are and how strong the communities within Bradford are. There are challenges, certainly, and we'll touch on them, but for the best part, Bradford is a wonderful place to be, and we want to make it better. We want to make it a more wonderful place to grow up for these children and families. We've got one of the youngest populations, if not the youngest population, average population across the UK. So these kind of young families that we're here to support is really important that we get our work done, and which is why we're all here today. And all those kind of changes that we can put into place, all that education, all those services that we provide, make a huge difference to those young families of Bradford. And we saw that when Bradford was disproportionately hit by things like COVID, and we saw, as healthcare professionals and social care professionals and those of us working in education and that kind of thing, we still had to go to work during that time. And for a lot of people who worked in Bradford who couldn't work from home because of the type of job that they do, they had to go to work as well. And we know that the people from poorer socioeconomic backgrounds were hit harder by COVID, by cuts in funding from government as well. So all of those things really challenge Bradford. And again, we'll touch on some of that as we move through the day. So kind of getting our work done and influencing the health of pregnant ladies, young families, children is so important, because those early habits live on into those people's lives as they grow. Okay, so I think I've already mentioned this really, but I work at the Ridge Medical Practice, which is over in Great Horton in Bradford. And that's another socio-economically kind of deprived area, but I love it. I love those patients. I've been there for coming up to 13 years now, and I understand them. I understand the challenges that they have to face every single day just to kind of go about their normal day-to-day lives. And the other thing about why I love where I work is because of the mix of people there. We've got a huge ethnic mix of South Asian, Eastern European, white Caucasian people coming through. And that in itself is enriching for me as a practitioner, but also presents with challenges as well. There's the obvious ones around language and culture, but even things which you guys will know about is just getting immunizations done to children who are a moving population through an area, particularly if they've come from other countries, and trying to coordinate childhood immunizations through that. So that's something that we work really hard on. And it's the same with kind of postnatal checks and smears in women, trying to get that across the board, because having an ethnic mix does present challenges when it comes to things like screening for cancer, childhood immunizations, and we want to face that head on and really give these people the best possible start. And that is what this is, again, all about. Now, I've got a habit of talking, so I've got to move fairly quickly. So I've only got half an hour, and I've spent a lot of time talking about chlamydia, haven't I? So I've got to move on from that. So we'll have some expert speakers today talking about nutrition and movement in pregnancy and the early years. But nutrition it's key, isn't it? Nutrition impacts all aspects of our health, both physical and mental. And the more we kind of learn about it, and there is a move now, isn't there, particularly among certain parts of the population, to move away from kind of ultra-processed foods to whole foods. But sadly, that part of the population is the people who can afford to do it, the people who have access to that kind of food easily and understand why whole foods are beneficial over ultra-processed foods. For many of my patients, if I talk to them about nutrition, and I do, and the importance of nutrition, it has to be done in an accessible way to them. It's no good for me showing them that plate, that infamous plate that you're supposed to say, this is how much fruit you're supposed to have, and this is how much carbohydrates and protein, all of that kind of stuff, because it doesn't apply to them, depending on their culture, what kind of level of finances they have. It has to be an individual approach to them. But it's not fair. Health can't be a privilege of the wealthy. It's not fair that they don't get access to these kind of foods and nutrition and education because of where they are born and their access to it. And that is where we come in again to try and influence that and talk to them about it. One of the questions I always get asked, and I think, again, this is going to come up later, is if you're pregnant, should you be eating for two? No. You might be able to have a few extra calories if you think in calories, around 300 extra calories, but you shouldn't really be doubling the amount of food you eat. And those kind of things are the things that we're supposed to be talking about with our pregnant ladies. And also, I've got the 10-minute warning. I'm only getting started. Oh, my goodness. Right, I'm going to move faster. Right. The other thing we talk about with our pregnant ladies is there a pregnancy diet? No, it's just a healthy, balanced diet where you focus on good nutrition around, lots of plants, lots of protein, all of that stuff that you and I should be doing is what pregnant ladies should be doing. But what we should have a think about is how ultra-processed foods, and by ultra-processed foods, so a processed food essentially is anything that's been altered from its original state. And we've got minimally processed foods, which are generally okay, but we've got ultra-processed foods, things like the confectionery, cereals, all of that kind of stuff, where they've had lots of additives, salt and sugar put in to make them taste better, but also have us wanting more of them and buying more of it, because it's a big kind of consumer capitalism approach to food. All of those things, eating lots of ultra-processed foods in pregnancy can actually increase your risk of pregnancy complications. And that is something that isn't talked about enough to these pregnant ladies. There's the obvious things, you'll put on weight if you have lots of things with sugar and fat in, and that increases your risk of gestational diabetes. But also other complications that they may not think about, like preeclampsia, low birth weight babies, are associated with the consumption of ultra-processed foods. And we've got to really be able not just to talk about it with them, but make sure they have good access to that. And I've been talking to Claire, who's going to come on later to talk about that, I hope. So there we go. And it's the same with babies, isn't it? I had a debate on Good Morning Britain. Debates on Good Morning Britain are the most aggressive things in the whole world. And I just want to come on and be nice, but they don't want that. That doesn't sell on Good Morning Britain. There was two debates I had. Is one whether breast milk versus formula milk. And, the key message, of course, we know breast milk has lots of health benefits and advantages, but the key message is fed is best, isn't it? And a full baby and a happy mum is the best thing for everyone. And the other debate I had, which was really weird, was, can adults drink breast milk? And should adults be drinking breast milk? And I'm not quite sure what that was all about, but I kind of pointed out that, breast milk isn't designed for adults even, and there are lots of other things that adults can eat and drink in place of breast milk. Honestly, the debates are sometimes crazy. But nutrition is important for children, both in terms of development physically, but also development mentally as well. And that is key to what we're going to be talking about. And movement comes into that as well. Movement is really good for your mental health. And exercise in pregnancy, that's always a bit confusing for some people. Should you be exercising? Yes, do your normal levels of exercise if you're pregnant and your body's saying that's okay. Pull back if it's not. There's certain exercises perhaps you shouldn't do. I certainly wouldn't advise rugby if you're pregnant, contact sports. I know if there's issues around lying on your back for too long beyond 16 weeks because of the pressure it can put on some blood vessels. So there are things that we're going to be talking about there as well. Right, I'm going to move on. So some of the challenges that we face here in Bradford and, you know, the wider population. We've talked about the young families and socio-economic backgrounds and access to finances and food. And there is, certainly where I work in Great Horton, there's quite significant levels of food and energy poverty. And that influences what patients have. You know, if I talk to a family of mine at work and say, well, you know, you should think about doing this much movement and this is what you should be eating. You know, for them, getting their kids off to school on time and getting to work is the most important thing, and that's all they can manage. And if that involves then, you know, just throwing some cereal on the table and then some chicken nuggets in the evening, if that's all they can manage, we've got to work with that and see what we can do to help that individual families. Generic advice is no good to these people. It's all about individual, tailored advice. I love that you brought a baby here. I love that so much. So the other thing, I'm distracted by the baby now. I can't talk. It's a very cute baby. So the other thing that I like to talk about, and I'll talk. We're not going to go into this in detail later on, but access to green spaces as well. Bradford is a beautiful city. There's lots of parks here, but they are dotted around. And I travel around a lot for work. And those of you who travel around for a lot of work will notice that actually other cities have a lot more green space than Bradford does, and access to it. London in particular, there's a green space on every corner pretty much, and you wouldn't think that compared to a place like Bradford, which is in Yorkshire, surrounded by such beautiful countryside. But again, if you're telling families about the benefits of green spaces, you know, you're more active in your green spaces, which is great for your physical health, but all that serotonin and dopamine that gets released when you're in nature, which is good for your mental health. If they have to get 2 buses, I'm running out of time, 2 buses and a train to a beautiful green space, they can't afford that. We've got to bring that to them, and that is a challenge that we've got to face as well. And that links into the other thing that Bradford faces is the air quality in Bradford. And I know there's things being done about that, but air quality is poor air quality in Bradford has been linked to such a big increase in A&E attendances for respiratory conditions amongst young people and children. And it's a contentious issue, I know, if you drive cars, but it's something that is super important. If we really want to tackle some of the issues in Bradford, we've got to improve the air quality. And a little bugbear of mine is the number of takeaway and dessert places in Bradford is just off the scale. It's just off the scale on every corner, pretty much, in certain parts of Bradford. And if you look at where they are and the type of population that's there, you know, they're often in some of the poorest parts of Bradford, the people who again, you know, where they can lead quite chaotic lives, and fitting food in has to be a quick thing so they can get to do their normal kind of things that they just have to get done. Access to that kind of fast food, ultra-processed, sugar-laden, additive-laden food is so easy for them, and it's not affordable, but they pay for it, and it gets eaten, and that has such long-term complications for them. And children, young people, the way it's targeted at them is really important. So these are the kind of challenges that we are facing here. And I guess the other thing, I've talked about it in a really positive way, is the ethnic mix in Bradford, and it is super positive, but that in itself presents challenges in how we access historically marginalised populations and give health information to them. I can't tell you how many times I've been in meetings about how to access historically marginalised populations, and people always say, and this really annoys me, they always say, oh, we should talk to their religious leaders, let's go into mosques. we're not tribes. We don't have leaders. It's really annoying. So some people may respond to the religion side of things, and I think that's really good. But lots of people won't. And they don't go to the mosque or the temple or the Gurdwara. And that isn't the way to access them. So I think it's really important when we're having these discussions that we're really honest about them and don't just cliche us all into one big conglomerate religious group with a leader at the top of this pyramid. That's not how we work.